Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be. I am Nicole BC, and you know everything. I'm going to offer a slightly insulting thought for something different. What if being exhausted is not proof of a job well done? What if it's proof of a job shit done? I should probably come up with a better one-liner for that. But you know what? I'm not going to. What if exhaustion is not proof of excellence? What if it is only proof of cost? What if exhaustion is not proof that work was meaningful, not proof that you were in integrity, not proof that you gave your all in some noble, transcendent, soul-lit act of devotion? What if exhaustion is just proof that something was expensive? And to be fair, cost tells us something. It tells us energy was spent. It tells us there was effort, aka resistance, aka friction. And it shows us where that strain, that force, maybe even that fear showed up. And when we stop romanticizing cost as if it automatically affirms quality, we might see that the most spectacularly exhausting things people do are not excellent. They're just shit. They're executed poorly. They are emotionally overloaded. They are born of bad timing, weak design, unresolved emotions, overpromising, underdelivering, people-pleasing, famine, scarcity, FOMO mindsets, and a nervous system that still thinks intensity is the same thing as truth. That is the trap. Especially if you're smart, especially if you're creative, especially if you're listening to this. Yep, you, smart and creative. Especially if at any point in your life you've managed to do incredible work under pressure, under duress, under heartbreak. God, my best art. And I get my heart broken like every day, y'all. Just saying. Under some Victorian fever dream of impossible circumstances, you actually think suffering is part of the recipe. You believe the chaos is necessary, and you start to tell yourself if it didn't kill you, maybe it wasn't your best. But what if your best isn't some feral animal? What if your best is not some last minute exorcism in a cute outfit? What if your best was calm, cool, collected, and dare I say, well rested? Maybe your best work is work you could do again. Maybe your best work is not what gets forced in a sprint fueled by cortisol and resentment, but maybe your best is what remains excellent, clear, generous, and sounds intelligent when repeated. That is what I want to talk about today. We've been kind of building up towards this one, right? Because in this economy, this culture, this rapidly shifting reality where everything is changing every 5 minutes and everyone is being asked to do 4 other jobs in any given moment with far less resources or even understanding that we had in the last moment, the ability to perform one magnificent collapse is not a flex. The flex is actually building a life, a business, a body of work that your nervous system can regulate within. There's a very particular kind of mythology around effort that most of us inherited without ever consenting. It says that the harder something feels, the more real it must be. I am the worst with this. I will blow it up when it becomes easy just to make it fucking hard for me. Like it is probably one of my most destructive patterns. The more it costs me, the more meaningful it becomes. The more exhausted I am, the more likely it is that I feel like I've done something valuable. It's fucked. This logic is seductive because it makes suffering feel purposeful. It takes the mess, the strain, the depletion, and it turns it into evidence. See, I tried. See, I pushed. See, I showed up. See, I crawled up that hill. I staked my white flag. And I died on it. But that martyrdom is far from artistry. And most of the time, it's just bad planning. I wish this were booze, just a LaCroix. I have a PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon, for those of you not initiated, koozie. And like I'm drinking my non-alcoholic bubbly beverages in it. It's like trying to church it up. Anywho, I think exhaustion masquerading as success shows up everywhere. In business, where people wear exhaustion like a backstage pass. In creative work, where people distrust anything that came too easy. In relationships, where emotional chaos is still mistaken for depth. In leadership, where the person holding everything together by force gets cast as the most committed person in the room instead of the person most overdue for a breakdown. Somewhere in there, many of us got trained to trust intensity more than integrity. If it felt calm, maybe it was not enough. If it felt measured, maybe it was not ambitious. If it came through clarity instead of crisis, maybe it's not in our best interest. This is a fucking scam. Calm doesn't mean shallow. Easy does not mean unserious or casual or fake. Steady does not mean lazy. Sometimes the thing that didn't wreck you was not less meaningful. Sometimes it was simply better designed. So I'm not going to, you know what I mean? We're going to talk about this today because I think in order to choose, in order to have your cake and eat it too, in order to know who you are and why you're doing what you're doing and build in this chaos, we cannot exhaust ourselves. It's just not fucking worth it anymore. A lot of people do not know who they are without the heroic save, without the rush, without the emergency, without being the one who can pull it off at the 11th hour with a half-charged laptop and a spirituality breakthrough concerning how much caffeine you've just mainlined. Yeah, sure, it's lovable, it's laughable. It is also valuable and visible. But we've got to imagine another way. Because if chaos were the stage where your competence got recognized, calm would feel insulting. You might feel invisible, especially if it's too vanilla. But that doesn't mean it ain't good. It's just unfamiliar. That's the distinction that changed it all for me. As soon as I realized, and this was offered to me actually a person I'm no longer friends with, another business owner, wildly successful, had made $1 gajillion by 30, blah, blah, blah. Have ethical concerns about this individual, which is why we're not in connection any longer. But this piece of advice was fucking good. We talked about a lot of our past professional successes and losses. And she looked at me and she said, I wonder what it would be like if you played it all the way through. And I was like, what do you mean? I sold the business. I got the band to where they couldn't have possibly imagined going. I've invested. I had the zeros to prove it, right? And she said, yeah, but what if you just stuck something out long enough that it got boring? And I was like, what? Easy, predictable, like a day job. I was like, yeah, I wonder if I'm not actually building from my best self. I'm building from my 911 self. The emergency self is impressive. She gets flowers. She gets accolades. She's fast, intuitive, adaptive, brilliant, capable, resourceful. She can put out fires. She get me through the deadline. the launch week, the implosion, the breakup, the fucking tax 911, the event pivot, the move, the caregiving, the podcasting. She is pretty amazing. She's magnificent in a crisis, but she is exhausted. She can no longer be this version of the operating system. So if you build your schedule, your pricing, your relationships, your commitments, your business model, your creative practice, your identity around emergency capacity, everything starts to feel like a crisis. What once was your reserve tank or your slush fund becomes your default fuel source. And I am so guilty of that. Your backup generator becomes your entire electrical grid. And now you're no longer using brilliance strategically. You're burning it for heat. And that's when things get really expensive in the wrong way, not just financially, cognitively, emotionally, relationally, spiritually. Your attention gets sloppy. Your patience gets shorter. Your discernment starts to weaken. You can still produce, maybe even impressively, but the internal cost keeps climbing. You keep getting the bills you can't pay. And the longer that goes on, the more you start mistaking survival for success. They are not the same thing. The emergency self can create stunning moments, but stunning moments are not the same as sustainable excellence. You've heard me talk about in my coaching, what I work with CEOs and founders on is sustainably scaling. That means you're going to have a business in 10 years and 2, but not just 2, not as fast as possible, right? I'm not about the sprint. If you're trying to create anything that lasts, from a business to a body of work, to a reputation, to a healthy team, to a life you actually want to live, you can't keep treating fires like infrastructure. So I get it. Believe me, you, my friend. Drama is incredibly beautiful. The all-nighter, the comeback, the impossibility of it all. The person everybody underestimated, rising from the ashes like a phoenix, battling a dragon, and some epic back tattoo I have yet to have the funds to get. We love that story. I love that story. It's got heat. It's got seduction. It's got the theater of proving everybody wrong. And you get to be right. This drama only plays because we were raised in cultures, families, workplaces, and industries and economies that rewarded overexertion. The reason why nothing's working right now is because we're paying bills for invoices we sent decades ago that our parents got billed, right? The person staying late looks dedicated. The person saying yes looks valuable. The person carrying too much looks essential. The person maintaining the standards, pacing themselves, and building elegant systems looks less passionate because they are not actively unraveling. That's perverse. That is not okay. We got to cut that out. Cut it out. We have built a world where looking overwhelmed is often more socially desirable than being even-keeled. Chaos reads as commitment, frenzy reads as ambition, strain reads as proof. Meanwhile, the calm, clear, competent person can get overlooked because they do not like that they are being dragged by wild horses across a spreadsheet. Whew. If you've internalized that, I'm raising both of my hands. Of course, calm feels suspicious. Of course, you wonder whether your best work is somehow less than because it didn't require a near-death experience. Drama creates a visible narrative arc. It gives us something to point to. It says, look at how much this cost. Look how hard I fought. Look how badly I wanted it. And none of this is irrelevant. Effort matters, tenacity matters, grit matters. But if the outcome is only accessible through consistent dysregulation, then we are not looking at excellence. We are looking at a pattern, a destructive pattern with good lighting. The drama is no longer evidence of meaning. It is evidence that the system is incapable of supporting a healthy life. Repeatable excellence is high art. It's not sexy. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's youthful. It's ethical. It's honest. The work you can do again and again and again is different. It's intelligent. It's generous. It's purposeful. It's high quality. That is not lesser than. That is refinement. That is mastery. That is achieved through time, through experience, through consistency, through adaptation, then evolution. When we think about any structure we trust, a bridge, a home, a kitchen, a payroll system, a relationship, a dog trainer, a surgeon, a plane, your favorite writer, the business you go back to over and over again, you're not looking for one magnificent fluke of an experience. It's reliability with soul. It's consistency with integrity. It's competence that is calm, cool, and collected. It is normalcy that feels like genius because that's so unusual these days. I think this is where people get confused. They hear your best should not exhaust you, and they think it means lower your standards, try less, don't care so much, choose mediocrity. No. I am talking about a demanding standard, not a softer one. A discipline of designing for longevity, the rigor of pacing, the humility of recognizing that your body is part of the business model, the discernment to know when urgency is real or when it's just trauma-flavored management, the maturity to stop worshiping what doesn't fucking work anymore. There's something deeply powerful about becoming the kind of person whose best work does not require theatrics to be legitimate. It means your standards have moved from performance into structure. It means your quality is no longer dependent on self-abandonment. It means your life is no longer a hostage situation staged by your own ambition. Because that's not impressive, my friend. But what we're talking about here is evolution. So I want to defend calm. I get criticized for being a stonewall, for being stoic. I think, pretty consistently underestimated in the spaces where you'll find me. Because calm is misread as detached, passive, uninspired, dispassionate, bored. Especially in cultures that recognize ambition when it is foaming at the mouth. But calm is not the absence of ambition. Calm can be the result of devotion that is organized properly. Calm means you know what matters. Calm means you're not wasting energy. Calm means you're not trying to prove something. Calm means you have enough skill. You no longer need adrenaline to access amplitude. Calm means your nervous system feels safe. Calm means your standards are internalized and not performative. See proof over performance. And calm means you stopped outsourcing your sense of worth to anyone. That is a radical achievement. The fantasy I think we seek is vindication, validation. This dramatic moment where all of the effort, all of the heartbreak, all of the late nights, all of the chaos, all of the years of being overlooked finally culminate in one breakthrough reveal. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Believe me, I am still waiting for that curtain call. And that's also not a strategy for success. It's just an emotional subplot. And you cannot build a life around finally being seen for how much you've endured. At some point, you You've got to put down the Bronte sisters and you've got to ask yourself, what life am I actually trying to live here? What work can I do without becoming a nightmare? These are different questions and they lead to different lives. Because once you stop needing your work to validate your suffering, you get to build for quality instead of escape, catharsis, validation. You get to pursue excellence without needing the whole thing to double as a revenge plot. That, my friends, is freedom. It's a little boring. It's a little predictable, but your nervous system will thank you. I think this matters more now than ever because we don't have the capacity for like 911s because the whole fucking world is a 911 right now. Like we are living in an era where fragility will cost you everything. Everything is changing. Markets, technology, platforms, jobs, industry, behavior, attention, leadership, finances, costs of living, everything. And what counts as value, how fast things move, what gets replaced, what gets automated, what requires humans. That landscape is dangerous right now, which means if your model for excellence is exhaustive, it can only work under pre-existing conditions, or it only produces magic when you're pushing past every limit, but the model itself is unstable. This is why I always talk about it from like this perspective of a blueprint, of a schematic. These designs are not less creative than a performance per se, but it's what makes the performance survivable. It's like the script, everything about it is a basic format and foundation upon which the aliveness of its enactment is applied. Once you have watched enough talented people destroy themselves because they had charisma, you realize this isn't about what we're born with. It's about what we do with it. There are a ton of founders, creatives, leaders, and saviors who get caught up in this cycle. They can produce, they can perform, they are passionate, they're reactive, they are ambitious, but they do not always know how to build conditions that prevent crisis situations from constantly recurring. The quality of work is there. The intention is there. The brilliance might even be there, but it's trapped inside this chaos demon that extracts too much to remain stable. And eventually the implosion is immutable. You start to resent the thing you loved. You lose your taste for the performance or the stage or the theater at all. And you start fantasizing about disappearing. I'm sure you've been there before. The real cost of building from exhaustion is not that it makes you tired. It makes you resent what you do in the first place. It makes you want to play small. And the whole point, one of the things I think in terms of building and engaging and creating is that we can expand without self-erasure. Like we can no longer sacrifice ourselves for the cause. What's the point? I think this may be my biggest takeaway here. What I really want you to hear. We don't trust like the work we do. We trust the explosions. We trust the minuscule juice that was squeezed from the tired old fruit. The heart that we ripped out of the chest, the idea we dragged into existence by panic and genius and spite and memory and old wounding and sudden deadlines and this fear of humiliation. And yeah, like it could be incredible art, but it's not repeatable. It's not replicable. It's accidental. And of course, we don't trust that. What if your best is available because you built the conditions that allow your intelligence and your genius to work safely? You honored your timing. You stopped overloading your calendar. You made fewer promises and you kept the ones you made better. You learned the difference between pressure that sharpens and pressure that distorts. And you stopped waiting until you were cornered to become decisive. That is a very different relationship with excellence. It is far less romantic, but it is sovereign. It says, my best is not an accident. It's not a 911 call. It's something I can access because I know how to work with myself safely. I know how to build around my actual capacities. I know how to create environments where quality has room to emerge and adapt and evolve before I set the fucking walls on fire. This isn't about, can I survive the impossible, or can I create magic during this collapse, or can I pull it off just one more time? This is truly building a life where your best is accessible without any collateral damage. Okay, one thing I also have to say, there is grief here. For many people, exhaustion has been one of the only languages of their effort. It's the only way you got recognized, because nobody noticed when you were steady and quiet and getting it done. But they noticed when you self-sacrificed. They noticed your blood offering. Nobody praised your boundaries, but they praised your overpromises. Maybe nobody noticed your pacing, but they loved your willingness to bleed. So yeah, of course, part of you still thinks cost equals love, cost equals seriousness, cost equals value, cost equals proof. We have to sacrifice. We've also been talking about this over the last few episodes. Like, how do you have your cake and eat it too? How do you choose? How do you create the evidence, the proof of work? How do you build that trust? It's sad because the old version of ourselves abandoned us. I've been sitting with some deep abandonment wounding because I fucking forsake myself. I let myself do like abusive things to myself in order to sit here and have this conversation with you. And I'm not going to do that anymore. And of course, there's fear. You know, I think it shows that we talk about it all the time. Like, I just can't go as hard as I did in my 20s. Thank fuck. Jesus Christ, that was not okay. There is another way to be impressive. There is another way to be trustworthy. There is another way to be excellent. And it's going to show up very quietly, suspiciously easy. And not because this work is trivial, or because you're no longer dragging a parade float of unprocessed pressure behind you. It might even feel empty, because when there's no drama, there's no adrenaline. But something subtler emerges. This trust, this range, this depth, this capacity. Your ability for the both and is like miles apart. You can hold so much more. You have better taste, you have better judgment, you have more patience, you have more honesty, you have more capacity for joy, more room for life. And not just because we're turning every achievement into evidence at a murder trial for your worth. This is a reorganization of your soul. So yeah, exhaustion is definitely evidence. It's just not what we're trying to prove. We're looking for excellence, alignment, brilliance, integrity, depth of commitment, not the nobility of some martyred cause, not cost, not poor performance or bad design, not that we're capable of overriding our own fucking nervous systems, not that like we're the 911 operator. Exhaustion was evidence of something that mattered to you. It was what showed you that you were willing to commit to this at all costs. But that is not actually the same thing as devotion, which is what you're looking for. Your best work is not the work you do at 110%. Your best work is the work that you do again and again. It's that like 70%. Your best work is not what you can sprint at. It's what you can do for hours and hours. Your best is what allows you to remain excellent, generous, genius repeatedly. Your best is calm, it's steady, it's deliberate. And in a world that keeps rewarding spectacle, urgency, noise, and collapse, there is something subversive about becoming the kind of person whose work does not need chaos to prove it has depth. Your best should not require a breakdown to become believable. Your best is something you can do over and over and over again. So just bring some awareness, some attention to the evidence you've been trusting. Like, where do you think exhaustion proves something, and what is that? What's another way to define good work? What's another way to define real effort? What's another way to define success? What's another way to define commitment for you? When we separate cost from quality, everything changes. So take one success and evaluate it in two columns. What made it high quality? What made it expensive? And just notice how those two things are different. It's actually really interesting. I encourage you to do that one. I know you can listen to these and like you're doing shit and you don't, but like hit pause, go back a minute or two. And then lastly, when you look at your calendar, your upcoming commitments, your day-to-day, your week-to-week, your creative process, your leadership style, what you're looking for, when you think about people's best, go through the same exercises. What makes it high quality? What makes it expensive? What we want is reliable excellence, not exhaustive. What if we retire this definition? What if we retire exhaustion? What if we actually show up well rested? I mean, just play with that. Next, we're going to talk about ownership over virality. There's been a lot of comparison going on here. I think it's getting much more obvious to me what the future of business is going to look like. Business 3.0, as my friend Nicole likes to call it. I'm not talking about myself in third person, Nicole Ayers from the Jumpsuit Verse. Anyhow, you're going to hear a lot more from me about that as well. And I'm going to go outside. It looks absolutely stunningly gorgeous. I'm going to get away from the computer for a little while. So thank you. Hopefully you're doing something.